People are searching for what is the reason why they can't get better. Lyme disease. If you have a condition for more than 6 months, not 6 years, 6 months. If you have a condition for more than 6 months, someone's not asking the right questions. Nothing lasts more than 6 months. Nothing lasts 6 months.
Hello, I'm Dr. Wendy Myers. Welcome to the Myers Detox podcast. And on this show, we talk about advanced topics related to health. We don't do the basics here. We talk about detoxification, health issues that are caused by heavy metals and chemicals in our environment. We talk about emotional trauma, bioenergetics, and anti-aging and other advanced topics. Today, we have a really good friend of mine and my personal doctor, Dr. Michael Rankin Sr., and we have such an interesting show. We're going to be talking about all the different bioenergetic modalities and software and testing methods that Dr. Rankin uses in his clinic, and that I personally use as well when I go and see Dr. Rankin at his clinic in just kind of right outside of St. Louis, Missouri. You can work remotely with people as well. But we're going to be talking about different bioenergetic software in scans that he does, namely a software called BioResonance, another one called ZYTO. These have been around for decades. We also talk about PEMF devices like the QRS, which can significantly improve sleep, detoxification, and overall health when used properly. And we do a deep dive on PEMF. So we talk about why we think the QRS is the safest and most effective PEMF device, how this QRS will discharge and clear EMF accumulation off of your body, helping to ground your body, how it creates a protective energy field around your body, and how most other PEMF devices, which copy the QRS's patent, which was the original patent, they can emit harmful EMFs that, despite the short-term benefits, despite people feeling like they're out of pain, long-term, they can have really bad effects on their health. And we also talk about something called an infinity bed, created by Dr. Dan Tuck, which is something that I use every night before I go to sleep. And we talk about exactly what that is and how it helps with sleep and relaxation. We also talk about these different bioenergetic testing methods and different biofeedback scans like the bioresonance, the biomedical, chi fractal software, and other different types of software to assess health, and how they're far superior in ZYTO as well, and how these are so superior in assessing what exactly is going on with you and in addressing your health issues much more effectively than the conventional, even functional means, and how these scans can detect cancer, lymphatic blockages, emotional traumas, and different things that can be contributing to your physical health issues. So you guys know, listening to this show, that I love bioenergetics. It's really important to me, and one of the reasons I do this show is to help introduce you to really superior ways to address your health. And through the power of bioenergetics, you can quickly, more effectively, without pain or without side effects, address your health issues quickly and effectively. And so I think that's what everybody wants, including myself. And that's why I use bioenergetics in my own health for many, many different reasons. So we're going to explore that on the show today. So our guest today is Dr. Michael Rankin Sr. He's an ND, a doctor of naturopathy, who practices at the Kelly Metabolic Center. And he addresses cancer conflicts, pain syndromes, and emotional trauma using different bioenergetic modalities like ZYTO, EVOX, bioresonance, etc., and recall, hearing, and trapped emotion response. And he also does cancer and metabolic evaluations and detox methods developed by Dr. Lee Cowden. He firmly believes that emotional trauma is at the root cause of all health issues, and uses emotional trauma resolution modalities in all of his assessments and programs with his patients. You can learn more about Dr. Michael Rankin and work with him at his website, testingcancer.com. Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, it's so nice to be here with you, Wendy. I always enjoy talking with you. It's sort of like we have a synergy of understanding about all facets of medicine, I think, because we both tried so many things, and so we know what works and we know what doesn't work, and we've experimented ourselves and, all that sort of thing. I remember the last time you came up to my clinic, we had just introduced some new devices, the infinity bed, tying that into the bioresonance. And then I've started doing some experiments with the QRS PEMF device. I've got 4 different PEMF devices, and the only one that I found that doesn't do harm is the QRS. And I'll talk about that. I've told, I read that and they advertise that, but when I measure it and I find out it's actually true, then it's like, okay, there's a big difference there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to have you come on because I want to talk about all the different bioenergetic modalities that you use, that you incorporate in your practice, that you do testing. You actually do testing with very sophisticated software to see if what you're doing is working or not. You do both baseline and then after tests to see if you actually see improvements. Because many times when people do certain treatments or they use certain modalities, they can't feel the difference. You have to do testing of the autonomic nervous system and the heart rate variability and the chakras and meridians and things like that. And a lot of people can't feel that, even though they have a marked improvement in their health after doing certain modalities. So what is your whole philosophy? Like, how did you get into using bioenergetics in your practice?
Well, I'll tell you, when I started in the 70s at one of the local hospitals in conventional medicine, I was really naive. I did not know what I know now. I was in my 20s. I already had 3 children by the time I was 26. One of them, my son Michael, who's a doctor too. And I just saw lots of things happening to people, whether it was a stroke or a heart attack or cancer or whatever the case may be. And I saw a lot of changes in people's attitude. I would literally sneak, and I'll use the word sneak, I would sneak back into the waiting room where people were being put before they went into surgery to find out what their thought patterns were. Because I always felt, my father told us growing up that my father passed away when I was 16. The doctors actually killed him with a bad decision. I didn't know it at the time, but it was a pretty traumatic blow at the time because my dad was a very fit person. He was a Golden Gloves boxer. We had horses and tractors and all the rest of it. He was an attorney. But he said, I can't raise 5 boys in the city. I've got to bring them to the country. So he did, much to my mother's dismay because she was a city girl. But what we discovered was that when I started going into the medical field instead of law like he was, I had a real affinity for that. And I also remembered my father telling me, he said, if you think you're sick, it's either spiritual, emotional, get over it. That was his reaction to everything. When we first moved to the country, we started having what was back then called hay fever. He said the best way to solve hay fever is go haul hay. Okay. He was always right about everything, so we just went and we hauled hay, and all of a sudden we have no hay fever. So, we didn't take drugs. We didn't have drugs in the house. We didn't take drugs. So when Dad got injured and they gave him a drug for pain after his bone had already healed, he had a large bone break, split his pelvis in half. Come to find out that the drug they had given him was never supposed to be used for a large bone break, and they were careless and gave that to him and ended his life. But 6 months later, I was raised in Catholic Christian type schools, and so I thought everybody went to some form of hell, purgatory hell, limbo hell, or hell. And I thought the people who were talking about God were the only ones that talked about God, and they were God. But it turns out that was not true either. But 6 months after he passed away, I'd injured myself. I literally had the scar here, and it's a wonderful memory because the cut was so big, I could stick my thumb inside the hole. It was a large cut, but I was so startled by it, and I was so tolerant of pain from football and everything else. It didn't really bother me from a pain standpoint. I was kind of mesmerized by the fact that my blood is black, and I thought, why is my blood black? And then God spoke to me and said, your Father's with me. I said, okay, so when we pass out of this physical body, we're actually going into the presence of God. I said, oh, I didn't know that. So that I could stop working all night because I worked midnight to late in the morning. Dad said there's always a solution to an issue. If you think there's no solution to an issue, then you didn't ask the right questions. He was an attorney, so questions are the answers. If you don't ask the right questions, you're not going to get the right answers. So it was always, we bring him an issue. We talked to him about some argument we're having as 5 boys, you can imagine. He said, well, what's the solution? Well, that's what we're talking to you. He said, well, what did you ask yourselves? And this is the way our lives would go. He would never answer a question without a question. So that's what happened. So fast forward to when I'm in an oncology ward, and I see these people looking like normal people, and all of a sudden they look like death warmed over. They literally looked like what my son was had in some of our history books, looked like Auschwitz. I said, my God, people went from normal looking to cadaver looking, gray skin and very skinny, and like, what's happening here? Come to find out, it wasn't cancer at all. It was what was being done to them. So you keep moving forward in time, and I realized when I go in before the open heart operations and I talk to people who were very frightened of dying, they did very poorly in the operation. Those who said, "Oh, this is no big deal. You know, my hands, I was healthy to begin with. This is just a little bump in my road, and I'm going to sail through this." And those people would literally sail through this. So that was my first exposure to emotional medicine. And so that's when, over the course of time, especially since the early 2000 time frame, come to find out that my forte would be in emotional medicine. That's why on my webpage, testingcancer.com, I have two different groups in there. I have one that talks about the cancer quiz, and the cancer quiz is very much related to emotions and experiences as much as it relates to anything. And it's the same thing with any other kind of test that we do. I don't do blood, urine, and other material testing, because I found that those are really inaccurate. They're good for a period of time, but they really don't tell you much of a story.
I agree. I think it's almost in the Stone Ages, in my personal opinion.
Yes, exactly.
It's energy medicine and doing bioenergetic scans, biofeedback scans. That's where it's at. That's where you're going to get way more information than you would get with traditional functional or conventional medical tests. Even though they can provide some useful info and track that, and I track my blood sugar and things like that. But when it comes to your health, because you're my personal doctor, I've been in your clinic many times and done all of your different bioenergetic scans. You do BioResonance, ZYTO, and many others. And there's just a tremendous wealth of information you get in a very quick scan. You can never get that amount of information.
No, you don't. And
never with conventional testing. It's just like the slow road to China.
Absolutely.
What you're doing at the doctor's offices.
Well, when I did that first several scans and we started to do some real deep research into this, Wendy, I found that I could do the bioresonance scan and I could do the biomedical scan that was developed software-wise by Dr. Cowden. And they put this into software that was literally the etiology of all that is Russia and China. So they've been looking at this for multiple decades. And so then I thought, if you put those two together, do they actually correlate? Do they actually communicate the same message? And it turns out when we test for cancer, we're looking at 20 different points of cancer. When you do a conventional test for cancer, they're looking at for the one that you were complaining about. So a woman says that she suspects she has ovarian, or she suspects she has breast cancer, whatever. Doing an X-ray of something puts more radiation into the problem. And we know for a fact in science tells us that when you radiate a tumor, you actually make it grow multiple times over. When you put a poison into a tumor, you actually make it grow. You actually make it split and grow. But when you look at the scan that we're doing, take the bioresonance scan, and then we take the biomedical scan side by side, and we look at the different types of cancers. There's 20 different dominant forms of cancer. We know that. They don't test for that because they don't have billing codes for that. Our practice is not dependent on billing codes. Our practice is based on a model of ministry, which takes us out of the realm of certain types of regulation for billing codes. So we don't do billing code types of testing because we found that it might be good for revenue, but it's not very good for the patient.
So for anyone listening that really wants to detox their body, go to heavymetalsquiz.com. I created a quiz for you. It only takes a couple of seconds. Based on some lifestyle questions, you can get your toxicity score and get a free video series that answers all of your frequently asked questions about how to detox your body. Check it out, heavymetalsquiz.com. Can you explain a little bit? So when people are doing these bioenergetic scans,
Mhm.
so tell us what that is exactly, and what is the basis for that? Like what are the scans looking for? Can you just explain that a little bit for someone
Yeah,
who
it's
may
a
not have,
very
they don't
good
have any
question.
concept of what that
Yes,
is?
absolutely. The two different types of scans we do, the biomedical scan actually uses an electrode that connects to the energy of our body. So people know what that means, just like when you have a heart monitor on you, it's giving an electrical information. Well, this is different software that measures the energy pattern of your body and gives you a message. The bioresonance scan works on a saliva and a blood sample predominantly. That's the best way to do it. You can actually put things over your ears, and lasers will then hit every acupuncture meridian in your ears, but it's extremely tedious. With the bioresonance scan, I can actually test you in Texas, which I've done, and I'll send you back information from that scan, and then I can actually send you back therapy via that same DNA sample. So I can connect to your DNA sample through what is called a black box. And we just call it a black box because it's a black box. And inside that box are geometric patterns, lasers, and lights, and they will then innervate that material inside, which is a blood or a saliva sample, and it will read more than 980,000 different points of the body, from the stem cells, the red blood cells, the energy of the brain, the blood flow in the brain. It will measure the literal function of the stem cells everywhere in the body. It will measure every inch of your lymphatic system. So let's say, for example, I have a lady right now who I know is dehydrated, and I've been emphasizing that she's dehydrated. This system, this bioresonance system, can go in, and I showed her this. I looked at the energy of the lymphatic tissue around her breast, and it's all black, which means there's no flow. Then I looked at the energy patterns around her inguinal lymphatic area in the crease of the leg, and it's also black. So she's blocked in two different parts of her body. Now, I can energetically test somebody long distance, but I can also do it physiologically through the bioresonance scan. And I showed her that the flow through the lymphatic system, which is one of the primary ways of detox, is blocked. There's no energy there. When I looked at her red blood cells, they were also predominantly black and no energy. If you can't carry oxygen, energy, and waste in your red blood cells, and you can't carry detox out of your lymphatic systems, it's going to clog up. So what happens is her breast tissue starts swelling up because it's all blocked. And why is it blocked? One of the reasons why it's blocked, and I told her that she's got to pay attention to this. They did a biopsy into the lymphatic system, which is like running over your lymphatic system, your garden hose with a truck, and expecting that hose to work. It doesn't work. It's blocked. So learning how to detox scars, you've got a very good podcast about detoxing scars. Everybody needs to study that. Everybody needs to do that. They need to do it like, if you got a scar someplace, you got to detox that scar. So when I measured this lady, and I measured the lymphatics, and I measured the block specifically where the lymphatic was blocked, it's exactly right on the bullet point where they did the biopsy, which then blocks the energy there, which now there's no flow. So why do we not recommend biopsies? Biopsies, according to Dr. Ravici in 1938, a few years ago, a lot of people didn't listen to him. 1938, he said that if you biopsy anything, you'll cause whatever's in it to spread. So if you do a colonoscopy, which I'm not a big fan of, and I'm not telling people not to do it, it's your own choice. I've never had one. I'm only 73 years old, so I'm not even middle age. But I've never done a colonoscopy. I've never had a biopsy. I will never have a biopsy. And I've never had a cold. I've never had the flu. I've never been sick a day in my life. We are always taught to monitor our health. And if we feel like there's something out of balance, go for the emotional and the physical first, and then figure out what that is. And emotional and spiritual. 99% of all patients I ever get with any kind of condition have an emotional or spiritual block. And I did a whole article on it, which people can write to me at my Testing Cancer website and ask me for the emotional block. One of the best podcasts we ever did, that has been the most popular, as you well know, is the podcast we did of Why I Cannot Get Better. People are searching for what is the reason why they can't get better. Lyme disease. If you have a condition for more than 6 months, not 6 years, 6 months, If you have a condition for more than 6 months and someone's not asking the right questions, nothing lasts more than 6 months. Nothing lasts 6 months. If it's a year, 10 years, I've been fighting this or whatever. First of all, the word fight, when you're talking about your own health, is like taking a ball-peen hammer and hitting yourself in the tumor. So you got, let's say a person has a tumor in their breast or a tumor in their prostate, they're going to take a hammer and they're going to hit it. That's fighting it. We don't fight it. What the challenge with these conditions, and we can literally see this in the bioresonance. This is the coolest thing ever, Wendy. In the bioresonance, we have this thing programmed so we can literally look at the emotions on whatever cell we're looking at. So if this lady, like I just mentioned, the lady with a breast issue, and it's swelling up because she had a biopsy, the biopsy's not been addressed, so the fluids are backing up. She thinks it's cancer, it's dehydration. Her hydration levels are less than 1%. So they should be doing sea salt and water. We put together an energy protocol for people. They can write to us and said, just put in your email to me, Clinic at Testing Cancer, energy protocol, and I'll send them the energy protocol. It gets into the iodine, which I know you're a big fan of. It gets into the detox protocols with the very specific supplements. Not all supplements work alike. There's a very few that work extremely well. We really like to stimulate glutathione production. We really like stimulating vibration. And each one of these things, I can do a pre-scan of someone. Then I do all these therapies. I can do the QRS, or I can do the infinity bed, or I can do the vibration plate. Then I come back 2 hours later and I do another evaluation on their body that I just looked at, and I can see which parts of the body have actually opened up.
Are you using the Chi Fractal software to look before and after?
Oh, very much so.
People?
Very
Okay.
much so. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, and that's a
Because-
software that you use. It's great. It's testing, dozens of parameters.
Oh,
And you can look at their energy field. You can look at their heart rate variability, which is one of the most important markers to track.
yes,
And their meridians and their chakras, and you can see all these changes and
that's
just
right.
see if what you're doing is having a positive effect. It makes so much sense.
Rapidly. And what's beautiful about this, it's another Russian-Chinese technology. Why do they develop all these technologies for remote viewing? Is because they're sending people to outer space, and they want to be able to monitor them remotely. One of the things that we can monitor with is bone density. I did not realize this, Wendy, because it's not my area of focus, but I had a lady who does a lot of bone work about trying to reverse or stop osteoporosis and bone thinning. And one of the things that we can see very easily, very quickly, is the bioresonance and the Chi Fractal. We can see the energy patterns in the body, whether or not they're even producing enough energy to produce bone mass. We can literally go into the bone marrow, and we can see if they have energy flow in the bone marrow. And if they don't, then they're not going to produce bone. We can see, like, oh my gosh, Wendy,
It's so sophisticated. Like all the different things that you have told me in person, on a podcast, when were speaking personally, it just blows your mind how a quick scan, it's maybe an hour or something like that, how a very quick scan can give you just an infinite amount of information and prioritize what it is that you need to work on.
That's
Because
right.
I think that with a wealth of information, you need to, know what to focus on first.
That's right. That's
And
right.
then when I came into your clinic, and I already knew what my problems were: liver, thyroid, my lymphatics at that time. I knew that was an issue, and that came up on the scan, that in my intestines as well. And it was just a relief to see this software working it's just so accurate, and it gives you hope that you really can address the root cause of your issues, not just on a physical level, but on an energetic level, on the physical, emotional, and energetic level.
That's right. So many people, Dr. Bernard Jensen's book, which is one of my favorite books of all time, we're able to literally go in and prove to people when they have an arrhythmia. I can go in and look at their colon with the bioresonance, see there's a block in the colon that then goes up to the heart, which is actually causing the arrhythmia. We can show that on the scan. We can show that on the Chi Fractal. We can show all this information together. We can show that if people come to me, like if someone's taken more than one drug, then they've been going somewhere to somebody who doesn't really have enough knowledge, information, or motivation to find out what the issues are. Otherwise, they wouldn't give you your drug. My dad told us, and ironically, the only drug my dad ever took is the one that they killed him with. He said, "We'll never take drugs." I broke many bones. I broke my right arm as a 9-year-old on a horse. I broke my left arm on a bicycle accident. I broke my clavicle. Never took a drug. Never took a pain drug. Never took a drug. We used ice and heat and things like that. We never took drugs.
Now, I know for me personally, I damaged my liver. That's why my liver is such a point of contention, is taking pain medication like Vicodin for lower back pain, because I was just in so much excruciating pain, and it really harmed my liver, and I'm going to be paying for that for the rest of my life.
Well, yeah, but Wendy, you're the perfect example of when you talk about detoxing the liver, we can literally do pre and post evaluations on the Chief Fractal, on the BioResonance, and the biomedical scan, and show what's improving. Okay, we can show. Remember, this is one of the most important things you ever said on your meetings, and everybody needs to remember this. If you have a liver the size of a quarter, and it's the biggest organ in your body, it's a huge organ, but you only have 1/4 of it left, you can regrow the liver enough to build new tissue. And it's the same thing with heart tissue. The heart is a magnificent organ, and it will recreate blood flow around it. One of the things that's been startling ever since the last several years and all the different shots that people are taking, I got a word that it was a very potentially catastrophic experience for people. I also had the ability to monitor whether there was a real issue or not. And so with the biomedical scan and the bioresonance scan and the Chief Fractal, I can literally see the energy in people's body. And if someone is showing some symptoms that they were calling a certain magical word, I don't use the word because it's a marketing word, but I could go in and I could look at people's lungs and find out that 98 to 99% of their lungs are so dry that they're accumulating toxins in their lungs, and that's why they're having a breathing issue. Well, every spring and every fall, in the 73 years I've been on this planet, I'll be 74 pretty soon. Every spring and every fall, people have issues in the lungs. People have issues in their smelling. Why? Because you get a lot of pollen and a lot of mucus buildup in your sinuses, you're going to have a smelling problem. Well, this happened when I was 9. So 9 and now 68, they're calling it different words, but it's the same experience. So what is the magical solution to lung issues is to get hypertonic saline from Ketone and a nebulizer for $56 on Amazon, put it into a little pod and breathe it in. And, just make sure you're working with somebody that knows what they're doing. It's not difficult, but it's important to know what you're doing. And inhale this, and you'll find after the first day, the amount of materials that you will cough up that have been accumulating for sometimes a decade are being exacerbated by issues in the colon. And when you're going to stop an asthma condition, we learned this as children, you squeeze this part of your hand right here. What is this? Large intestine. So this is large intestine. This is lung. So on the biomedical scan, on the bioresonance scan, and on the Chief Fractal device, we can literally measure the energy in the large intestine in each one. And when people are having lung issues, I can tell you why. When people are having arrhythmias, I can tell you why. And those things are all reversible. We found that, for example, if you eliminate electrosmog, we developed a card that literally takes your cell phone, any cell phone, and turns it into a healing device. We don't have to be afraid of electricity. We don't have to be afraid of things like that, because we can literally convert the negative energy into a positive energy. I know you were going to go, but you may not be able to go, but I'll make sure that I record it. In South Dakota, I'm giving a talk on how to use the love of God to change a negative influence. One of the epidemics in the United States today are root canals. A root canal is, we've been told in scientific medicine, more than 1,100 journal articles about root canals, and started by Hal Higgins, one of the most brilliant dentists of our time. A root canal can block up to 65% of the energy in the human body. in the biomedical scan, in the bioresonance scan, and in the chief fractal, I can literally see in those three tests independently agreeing with each other what effect the root canal is having on somebody. So, for example, Wendy, I had a lady who had made some decisions that caused some serious bone loss by taking a drug for cancer that they knew caused bone loss, and it literally was disintegrating her jaw. Now, we fixed the issue with the toxicity by following a lot of the protocols that you talk about. We implemented those protocols. We used our energy medicine to reverse those things. But what was the dominant thing that we had to reverse and work on was the fact that when she was 3 years old, she grew up in a family that was Jewish background, not Jewish spiritual, but Jewish political. And this lady was told by her great-grandmother, a 3-year-old little girl, you don't deserve to be happy if you weren't in the Holocaust. To a three-year-old little girl. So she grew up thinking that she was unworthy to be happy. So this manifested by her marriage choices. This manifested by her decisions. And so there was this desire to cause stress in her own body. So what did she do? She went out and got a root canal. All of her liver numbers were completely normal. All of her cancer numbers were completely normal. She got one root canal on the left side lower of her tooth, and all of her liver numbers exploded negatively, and all of her cancer numbers went in like super cancers from one root canal. So what I did was I took the Radionics device, and I took the information from the bioresonance, and I created a frequency. I put that frequency onto the plate of the Radionics device, and I laid my hands on it as if she was there with her tooth. And I just prayed, and I said, I asked for the love of God to fill that energy with the same power as the block of the root canal and give it to her as love. She had not slept in 3 months. She was too embarrassed to call me to tell me that she had made this decision, which she knew later was not a good decision, but she got feared into it. Any decision that you have to make on the spot, don't make it. Walk away. Call me. Before you make any kind of a decision, I'll tell you why it's good, why it's not good, and then prove it to you. You go back and do whatever you're going to do. So we took this information. I just prayed for her with her. She wasn't there. She's in another state, 2,000 miles away. And I just laid hands on her tooth, image of her tooth. I laid hands on her DNA in the device. And I said, thank you, Jesus, for taking the power of the root canal and giving it back to her as unconditional love. Love conquers all discontent, all of it. I can literally prove it in the bioresonance scan on this lady. I can prove it in the biomedical scan on this lady. Her numbers that had gone through the roof negatively all went back to normal. And she had not slept in 3 months because of leg pain and insomnia. And in one night, she slept.
You know, you know what I love about talking with you is because you give so much hope to people like myself that have made poor decisions with their health. They've gotten root canals or they've gotten plastic surgery, fillers, or whatever BS that they did, and they have scar tissue all over their body, or just have emotional trauma. And there's simple, easy ways, non-invasive, not painful, easy to do, not terribly expensive, to reverse all these things using frequency, because everything resonates at a frequency. So everything could be measured.
Yes.
And it could be measured with a biofeedback or a galvanic skin response test, and to figure out exactly what is going on with you, and can be addressed so simply. And I don't think people realize how simple energy medicine is, or using the power of bioenergetics. Because when I go to your clinic, I'm there usually a couple days.
Yes.
I come in feeling like just a pile of dog poop, you know, just for whatever reason. After I finished the heavy docuseries, I was just spent. I was just,
oh my gosh, you were so exhausted.
I was just, you know, I wasn't able to take care of myself physically because I want to get this information out to people. So I'm like, I need to revive a session with Dr. Rankin. So I come in and, you know, it's just amazing. I'm just floating on air when I come out of there, because you just release so much. So, you know, the energetic blockages, and, you know, just address so many different issues all at one time. And it's amazing, this laboratory you have of all these different bioenergetic devices like the Radionics that you mentioned. And
yes.
yeah, so So why don't
Wendy, I'm
you?
going to tell you something that we learned. It goes back to when I was studying Chinese medicine in the 90s. I remember this old doctor trying to explain something to me. He spoke no English, and he was like a country person. I later find out from my son Daniel, because Daniel would travel with me when he was old enough, like 3 and 4 years old. He would interpret for me. He says, "Papa," he said, this doctor speaks a very old country Chinese. I'll see if I can understand him." So he would speak to Daniel, this little 3 or 4 year old little boy, and Daniel would interpret to me. And he said, "Put your hands, your left hand over your heart chakra, the middle of your chest. Put your other hand on top of that." He said, "All love is in the center of our heart because that's where God is." That's what the old man told us. He was 96 years old. Okay. And he's telling Daniel to tell me this. And Danny goes, "Okay, data, data, data. Ha. I only know those words, which means, okay, I got it. So then he'd tell me that. So fast forward to today, and that's what I tell people now. Put your hands in the middle of your chest, and we don't ask for something. I don't think I've got my new book to you yet, called Finding Hope. It's a beautiful book, Wendy. Oh, I'm so excited for you to get my new book. And it's called Finding Hope. And it's all about the stories, including our own, that you and I have shared about helping people find hope. And when we take and we don't ask for something. If we ask for something, it means we don't have it. "Oh, I'm praying I get this." Well, it means you don't have it. We don't say should or could, because those are shame words. We don't say sorry. Get the word out of your mouth. It's like the most horrible sound in your mouth is sorry. Don't say those words. If something happens, people don't want to hear that word. They say, "What can I do to help?" Something happens. We had a neighbor whose little boy was badly injured. I didn't say sorry. I said, "What can I do to help?" Okay. I tell everybody that. Don't say sorry. Say, because it means like you did something wrong. It's the wrong word. It's kind of like the CNN word. It's not a good word. You just say, "What can I do to
The
help?"
CNN word.
Right? So people say, "What can I do to help?" Now you're actually asking, "What can I do to help?" And most of the time it says, "I really don't know." Well, let's see what we can do. And then they go from there. And now all over town, what they'll do is they say, "Call Dr. Rankin." They'll have an answer for you. You won't have to do this. You won't have to do that. You won't have to take this drug. Okay. From the first time someone was given a drug, it means that someone wasn't either smart enough, cared enough, or wanted to spend time enough to help you solve an issue.
This episode is brought to you by Puree Supplements. So millions of people take protein powder every day. And if you're going to take something every single day, it becomes especially important to make sure that it doesn't have toxins in it that will harm you. And so that's why I choose and recommend Puree's PW1 whey protein, because after all the research that I've done over the years on the toxicity levels in many protein powders, especially plant-based protein powders, I'm very cautious when choosing a brand that I trust. And I personally only take whey protein powder. I don't do plant-based because of the toxin levels. So there's a really interesting study, a new one done by the Clean Label Project that was just published. And it's a study of 160 top-selling protein powders representing more than 80% of the market in the US. And shockingly, or maybe not surprisingly, it showed that nearly half of the top-selling protein powders in the U.S. exceed California's Prop 65 safety limits for lead, the staggering 21% containing double the acceptable amount of this harmful heavy metal. And so this discovery isn't just cause for concern, it's alarming when you're trying to buy something healthy and you're taking it every single day. And as you know, the potential health impacts of lead exposure are nothing to take lightly, ranging from cognitive problems to reproductive issues, lowering IQ in children. So it's really a wake-up call that demands attention that we address on this show. Puree is so committed to create the highest quality products. It third-party tests every batch of every product for more than 200 contaminants, ranging from heavy metals, BPA, forever chemicals like PFAS, oxidation, dioxins, pesticides, bisphenols, and many more. And the results are published online on their website, puree.com, for full transparency, or you can scan the QR code on the product to see the results. And Puree's mission has always been rooted in transparency and safety and virtuosity, even in the product category for any product that they produce. So you can thoroughly trust that any of their supplements are clean and of the highest quality. I would never recommend a product that I don't use personally. And so that's why I recommend Puree pasture-raised whey protein powder. It tastes great. It's super creamy and super delicious. And I also have peace of mind that the products are tested and clean, especially when it comes to the chocolate flavor, which can be the most contaminated with lead and cadmium and other heavy metals. And in P1W, you find real vanilla seeds from bourbon vanilla from Madagascar, which is known for its high quality and amazing taste as well. Each serving of Puree's PW1 contains 21 grams of minimally processed, clean, high quality whey protein powder from pasture raised cows. So that means it contains no hormones, no GMOs, and no pesticides. No, thank you. I have never seen a supplement line that's this dedicated to the highest level of quality. And so for my listeners, Puree is offering a special coupon code. So you can try it for yourself for 20% off today. Just go to puree.com/Wendy and enter Wendy at checkout. So that's PUORI.com/Wendy and enter Wendy at checkout. Yeah, and that's the biggest problem with going to, I mean, a lot of conventional medical doctors, very well-meaning, they got into their practice to help. I'm not trying to, to crucify anyone here. I'm just saying I'm trying to open people's minds to a different way of approaching their health in a more holistic way, and that's my only goal here. And I think that a lot of doctors are just, people go to them and they're just not, they're such a limited toolkit, and it's very antiquated. Like even Joe Rogan, I heard on his podcast, was saying that, or I'm sorry, as Andrew Huberman's podcast, he was saying that 50% of information taught in medical texts is wrong or outdated.
That's
50%.
right. Yeah, they have to understand. It's not how happy the doctor is. It's not how nice the doctor is. It's how much information he's got. When you go through medical school, you don't learn physiology per se. You learn how to use a drug to take care of a problem. That's literally what happens. You learn how to follow billing codes. That's what they dictate to them. It's not that they're just they're doing it because of malicious reason. They're doing it for their own well-being. The only way you can keep your own license is to follow billing codes and follow the plan. It doesn't necessarily mean they're bad or whatever else. It means that if you don't follow that plan, you can be taken to court, you can be sued or whatever else. And what people don't understand is that the boards that regulate this are often run by the very doctors that are on the boards of pharmaceutical companies and whatever else. So it doesn't mean we are dependent on that, because everybody can learn. If somebody wants to learn basic physiology, all they have to do is send me an email, clinic@testingcancer.com, some basic stuff, basic energy, basics, sleeping issues right now. Wendy, you mentioned to me last week that sleeping issues, insomnia, is epidemic. Okay. One of the reasons why it's epidemic is that people look at the screen 2 hours before they go to sleep. When you look at this screen, no matter how many blue light covers or whatever else you put on it, the only way that this thing will not bother you is if you put so many covers on it, you can't see it. Okay. Now, okay. And you also don't want to have your brain stimulated all night long with a negative energy, which is what a phone is. So I came up with this. Let me show this to you. I don't even know if I got one of these to you yet. I put in what we call the happy modem cards. Okay. This is an image of a stone from my front porch that has an assay level of more than 1 trillion units of energy. And in the middle of it is a radionics symbol. So when you put this inside your phone, this phone goes from a negative energy to a healing energy. So I did an experiment with my Chi Fractal, my BioResonance, and my biomedical scan, and I put this on my modem. I normally turn my modem off at night. I live in a country area, so there's nothing close to me. So I have a modem that connects to a cell tower. And so the cell tower, as you can well imagine, is not necessarily a positive thing, but it's the only way for me to get any kind of a signal. So what I did was I took these cards and I used my radionics and bioresonance system to create the countermeasure of the negative. So just like I took the negative energy of the root canal, which is 65% block of the entire energy of the body. That's a powerful energy. Take that and convert it with God's love and put it back in. I took the modem, put it in my lap, and literally converted that negative energy of a modem and put it back with God's love into a card. I took every other thing, cell phones. I had 3 or 4 cell phones. I had workers coming by, give me their Apple phones, their every phone they've got. I have a computer sitting in my lap, and I programmed all those negative energies into a card that literally gives you love and almost like a giggle at night. So then I measured my sleep with the Aura Ring, and I measured my sleep with the BioResonance and the biomedical scan and the T-Fractal. Everything improved as if my modem was off. So then I turned my modem off, and I actually got better sleep with my modem on because the modem becomes a healing device. We think of everything as being negative, but you've always talked about it, convert. So that's what we're doing. We're converting. And
yeah, you're fighting frequencies with frequencies.
Exactly.
You can change the frequency.
Yes.
There are so many things that you can do. You can give the opposite frequency. I mean, these are incredibly powerful tools, and many of them were invented in the 1900s,
Exactly.
late 1800s.
Exactly.
All of these tools, Radionics, Rife, Scalar, discovered by Tesla. All of these things were discovered in the early 1900s, but they were suppressed by Rockefeller and the mainstream medical model that he created that still exists today. That's
right.
why we don't hear about any of this stuff.
Well, let's look at some of the books that people need to have on their reading list. Okay. The Invisible Rainbow is the #1 book, I believe, in the world that I've ever read. And it's the longest book I've ever read on this topic about electrical pollution. Some of these devices, albeit sounds good that they have a PEMF, some of these devices out there, the only one I measured that doesn't have electrical smog is the QRS.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. So you're talking about PEMF devices.
Yes.
And there's a lot of them out there. I've never used any of them. The grounding pads, a lot of PEMF devices. Tell us what the PEMF device is exactly. What is it? What is the purpose of that?
Okay, so if we look at when people try to ground themselves, they ground themselves to a plug in their house, which has dirty electricity. I have done pre and post measurements of people laying on a grounding pad plugged into their electricity, not plugged in outside, not grounded literally, but plugged into their electrical system, and all of their numbers plummet because it's literally sucking the energy out of your body. You become a grounding rod. Same thing with sleeping on a bed with springs in it. You become a grounding rod. Not a good idea. But if people can't afford to change their bed, they can literally cover their bed with an EMF cloth. It's very cheap cloth. You can buy it by tens of, like $150 for enough to cover a king size bed. Cover the springs, and now you don't get your springs don't become an antenna.
And that's really smart.
Oh yeah, real cheap, real smart. Every plug in my clinic, my house, they're all covered with little EMF cloth. Now, from a decorator standpoint, my cousin's a decorator. She goes, Michael, we have to put some kind of design on these things. These are really ugly. I said, okay, we'll do that. If you look at the pulsed electromagnetic frequency devices, they all use the same terms, but they all don't work the same way. I remember one time I was in Texas and I was at a doctor's office and somebody turned on one of these devices that was as big as a refrigerator. I'm joking, but it felt like it. When he turned it on, it made my whole body hurt. It shook me in my chair. I got away from it immediately because it was literally giving me brain trauma. It was a PEMF device that was so powerful that it was literally damaging my body. You have other devices like the Infinity Bed that moves a wave like this. Well, we talked about the chi.
And I sleep on that every night. So I have an Infinity Bed by Dan Tuck.
Yes.
And it just changed my sleep. It's unbelievable.
Amazing.
I put it on an hour. I get in bed an hour before I go to sleep. I lay on that sucker and I just completely, my cats are on it too. They gravitate towards it. I just completely relaxes my body. It's unbelievable. It's a game changer.
It is a game changer. One of the things I've discovered with that bed, I was experimenting with some recipes and not really careful. And then I had some people bring in some stuff, which I normally don't eat when people bring in things. I don't know how they made it. And turns out there was a really strong allergy stress response to that was giving me acid reflux, which I never have unless I've had food that I have an allergy stress response to. Acid reflux is food negative stimulus. So I decided instead of doing the fast, easy thing of baking soda, which you can do small amounts without damaging your body, I thought I'm going to try the bed because Dan told me that if you turn it on to positive, it reverses acid reflux. Literally, I turned on a timer. He said, Michael, turn on a timer. So I turn on a timer. I lay on the pad. I turn it on to positive, and literally in 2.5 minutes, acid reflux, any symptoms were gone.
Wow.
Stomach ache I had from the food I just had, gone. No acid, nothing, no acid reflux. So I thought, okay, let's find out if that's just postural. So I turned it off completely, and literally within about 3 minutes, the acid reflux came back up. I turned it back on and went right back down again. Oh my gosh. I said, I know this thing helps with sleep because I could see my deep sleep double and my REM sleep triple, but I never thought about it as an acid reflux reversing device. And it does. It literally reverses acid reflux.
So what was it? What is the infinity bed? I want to get back to PEMF in a second because I think that's a big
That's a
topic.
big
A lot
deal.
of people buy all of these expensive PEMF devices.
Expensive, and there's a lot of not good
There's a
ones.
lot of garbage out there. Ugh.
So when they
But
made the
what is the
infinity bed, the infinity
yeah.
bed is based on a very old concept technology that Dr. Hazel Parcells created for herself because she was ill, and she was ill all the time, and she couldn't understand it because she was very healthy for a while, and then she started to deteriorate. Now, fast forward to when she passed away, she was 106 years old. So she literally reversed her downgrading energy and her downgrading health back to very, very youthful health. And then she died with what looked like a very youthful 106-year-old person. So she never looked her age. And what she described it was that the infinity bed moves like in a figure eight pattern. When you look at the coils inside of it, they're literally in a figure eight. So
Yeah,
the energy
and it's a
doesn't go.
little, I mean, it's full of copper, correct? So
Yes,
the
that's
bed is
right.
kind of full of copper, creating this frequency, this infinity frequency. So, it can, makes it a little bit expensive. Copper is very expensive, but
Yeah.
when you're talking about your health, I mean, it's
Yeah.
for me, I can't do enough for my health, or I'll pay anything. I will pay anything to improve my health, and especially when it comes to sleep. And this is such a game changer.
It is.
Everyone falls asleep on this mat. At every conference
Everybody
I've
does.
been to,
It's so
everyone
fun.
falls asleep
Yeah.
instantly on this mat.
It's so fun. It's
Why
so
is that?
fun.
Why?
Well, because it's lulling you to sleep like a baby. Okay. We had a bunch of puppies recently. They're now about 3 months old. When they first were born, in order to calm them down, you just rock back and forth. I thought, well, I'd just lay on the infinity bed. So I did. I'd get all the puppies and wrap them in my arms, and I'd lay on the infinity bed, and they'd all conk out because it would give them this lulling pattern like this. And it literally is like rocking you to sleep. And the Chi machine is another one, which is one of my favorite, inexpensive, $150, $200. I have one for 27 years that Daniel's mother bought me 27 years ago, and I still have it, still works. The Chi machine, you got to use it properly. You got to support your knees and stuff like that. But when you use the Chi machine without any elastic between your feet and your head, it's going like this. And it never stops. If you watch it, it doesn't go clunk, clunk, clunk like the cheap ones do. It goes like this. It literally moves in this kind of a pattern. So David, my working fellow that you met at the farm, he took it apart to show me. It never stops. It rolls on a pattern that doesn't stop. It's like this, backwards and forwards. The infinity bed does the same thing. It moves like that. It turns out, Wendy, that both of these things are the same pattern as a goldfish. A goldfish is like this. That's why goldfish live a very long time. And I found out, by the way, just a little side note, you never put goldfish in your pond because they'll destroy your pond. And you don't put them in creeks and whatever else because they're like a fire ant in Texas. You get them started and you can't get rid of them. But they just live forever. They just like almost nothing harms these things. But it's this pattern of their tail, and it's that kind of energy. Well, when you look at the PEMF device from QRS, it's the only one that doesn't have electrical smog. It's the only device in the world that actually causes your body to discharge smog accumulation. All of our bodies have receptor sites all throughout our body. That's what the Chinese call qi. When you do qi, like when they do the Tai Chi with their knees bent, they're doing that because they're trying to drive the qi from their quads up to their butt, up to the kidneys and up. And that drives qi into the batteries of our body, where our bodies can also collect negative smog. And most of the devices out there have negative smog. You really got to be careful with those. But the QRS actually discharges smog type energy. And it also gives you a barrier over 3 feet wide around your body while you're laying on it. So I tried this last night and I was going to do some reading. I had lots of reading to do and I always do that before we were going to have a talk. And so I was going to read this information about the whole thing about electrical smog. And I turned the QRS on to relax and sensitive. And I must have lasted about 25 seconds because I woke up at 5 o'clock this morning. I'd slept 9 hours straight without waking up. And it just put me out. And oh my goodness, nothing does that. Nothing does that. So it literally takes every part of your body and puts it back into a rhythm where we can sleep. It affects the pineal gland like nothing I've ever seen before. The other thing that it found that it does, it literally detoxes the pineal gland. A lot of people eat foods that have bromine, and that's why iodine is so important to clean off the bromine receptors in your body. But when you eat too many foods with bromine, it starts to clog up the body. And so when the bromine receptors get clogged up, then that's the other thing that causes insomnia, because the pineal gland gets calcified. And so the other thing that we found with the QRS is doing the calcium cascade with the Mother Earth minerals. You do about 2 teaspoons of Mother Earth minerals calcium, which is the double plus calcium. It's the only calcium that you can safely take at all. Never take a calcium supplement.
Yeah, I take the ionic calcium specifically to decalcify my body.
Yes,
which is it's very
magnificent.
counterintuitive.
Yes. There's a fella out in New York, and I don't remember his name right now. Michael brought him into our practice years ago, and he does ultrasound, and he measures calcification on the organs like liver and sternum and the chest area, the rib area. And he found there was little particles of calcium in all these different people. So we just learned about the calcium cascade about 20 some odd years ago. So we did the calcium cascade with the double plus calcium. 30 minutes later, we do the magnesium. 60 seconds later, we do the potassium, and then we do the zinc, 60, 60, and like that. 30 days later, he comes back into Texas to do the ultrasound, and he's looking at me, and he's running the probe all over. He goes, "Dr. Rankin, something's wrong." I said, "What do you mean something's wrong?" He goes, "Well, I've been doing this a long time, and people are really worried and concerned about how much calcium they're building up, because if you have calcium somewhere on your teeth or anywhere else in your body, you can't see anywhere else in your body. That's why to clean the calcium off your teeth, you're literally taking away one of the benchmarks in your body that tells your body that it's building up calcium. We do the calcium cascade. Calcium doesn't build up in your teeth. It doesn't build up in your arteries. It doesn't build up in your organs. It doesn't build up in your joints. It literally detoxifies and dissolves the calcium deposits like bone spurs and things like that. It's magical. You did I meant to look for this last night, and that's when I fell asleep. You did a podcast about castor oil. Castor oil is magic, absolute magic. Dr. Bader, who's one of our crazy gurus about PEMF, he's a little hard to listen to sometimes. Don't listen to this podcast, Dr. Bader. I love him. He's like a fountain of information. He's got 10,000 words in a few seconds. That's why you have to record everything he says. But if you take castor oil and you use it on this PEMF device, it causes such a harmony in your body that the detox effect is extraordinary. It literally will dissolve bone spurs doing the calcium cascade and doing the castor oil wherever you think you got a bone spur. It will literally dissolve it in 30 days. It's amazing. It's just amazing. So one of the other things that they do is they have a little pen. And they also have glasses that you can wear. It's like putting the mat on your eyes. So one of the epidemics we have in the United States today is bone loss, which it can reverse and then keep it stabilized and normal. Cataracts is epidemic. I went in to see an eye doctor about 3 years ago just to get a foundation, because I hadn't been one in 40 years. And it said, you got to go back in a year. So I went back in a year just to see how much I'd reverse whatever it is I needed to reverse. And they started telling me a story. I said, no, wait a minute. You're trying to tell me again about cataract surgery? Did you even look at my last scan? They go, well, no. I said, well, go look at my last scan. They go, oh, well, there's about a 37% improvement. I said, yeah, duh. And I left. And I said, you just proved my point. And I said, you don't tell somebody they need something if they're reversing it, find out what they did, and then do that. Well, they didn't do that because they make money by whatever they're doing, not by reversing it, right? So you can take this calcium cascade and you can take this PMF device. You can literally put it over your eyes, either with an eye mask, with goggles, or you can put it with a little pen and it's like taking the entire PMF device and pointing it to a spot.
Is that also, do the goggles, do they also improve macular degeneration or eyesight?
Tremendously. The number one cause of macular degeneration, as you well know when you talked about this, is inflammation. Lack of blood flow, lack of minerals, and inflammation buildup. And that's reversible. Okay? Michael has reversed it with the Equiscope, but not everybody can afford a $45,000 Equiscope, right? If you get one of these devices and you learn these different protocols, you can literally reverse heart disease, bone loss, macular degeneration, eye health, all with one device. It's spectacular. And it's a matter of minutes. It's not like days. You use it 8 to 16 minutes twice a day.
And that's the QRS mat.
The QRS, yeah. Mm-hmm, yeah. So I use it at night, like I mentioned before, because I've been doing this sleep experiment to see just what affects what. And I found that when I put it on this relax and sensitive, I don't last but a few seconds, even if I wanted to. I woke up in the same posture. Normally I sleep on my side, but I was trying to read this book. So I had this book and the book is laying on top of me and my hand was on the side and it's 5 o'clock in the morning. 9 hours later, I never moved. So, that's a good sleep.
Yeah.
When people move a lot, they say, I move a lot in my sleep. It means you don't have a good sleep.
Yeah.
It means that something is stimulating you negatively, so you have to move away from that stimulus. And a lot of times it's a cell phone.
So this episode is brought to you by Chef's Foundry. They've got a fantastic line of cookware called P600. It's totally non-toxic. I think people don't realize that when they're cooking, most people's cookware is adding toxins to their healthy food, that people spend so much money on healthy organic food and then cook it in toxic cookware. And so that includes cast iron, which I do not recommend. It adds way too much iron in a form that we can't absorb. People use aluminum cookware, which is very inexpensive, but it's used at most restaurants, giving us tons of aluminum. People are also using ceramic cookware, which can leach toxins into your food. And not to mention the nonstick cookware. It just has so many PFAS or PFAS that is so toxic. It's one of the forever chemicals. So you really have to pay attention to what you're cooking in. So that's why I recommend the P600 line by Chef's Foundry, so that you can have peace of mind when you're cooking and you're not getting any nasty chemicals like lead or cadmium or nickel or PFAS in your healthy food. You can get a special discount for my listeners by going to bit.ly/Myers Detox. So that's bit.ly/Myers Detox, MYERS DETOX, to get an exclusive discount just for my listeners. I want you to be thinking about what you're cooking your food in, and I highly recommend the P600 line by Chef's Foundry. Let's talk about and a lot of people sleep with their cell phone next to them and charge it next to their head. It's just like, oh my God. And so let's talk about the bad PEMF mats. So you talk about the QRS, and that one, it works fantastically. And you can get that from you. You can go to testingcancer.com and contact you to get more info about that. But there's a lot of mats out there and they're really expensive, $4,000 or $5,000, $6,000. And people report improvements. They report reduced pain. What is actually going on there? Even if people get improvements, what's it doing to their body?
If you used a vibration plate for the same period of time you use one of these PMF devices that are bad for you because of electrical smog, you would get improvements. So it's not the short-term improvements, it's the long-term improvements that make a difference. Anything happens in the short term. If you're going from a point of no energy in your body, and that blockage of energy is what Chinese medicine called the blockage of energy or pain. Blockage of energy is pain. So when you use any device, even if it's a bad device, you can cause a change in the energy pattern of some part of your body, and you can actually feel an improvement. Over the course of time, unfortunately, when we measured some of these things, one begins with an I and one begins with a B, PMF devices that I would not ever recommend. One of them I had to get off. They just turned it on. I had to get off because it just made me feel really terrible. since I use very good monitoring tools and I'm really sensitive to good energy, bad energy, I had to get off this thing because it was being sold as a multi-level marketing thing, began with a B, and it was terrible. The smog was horrific. I couldn't even stay in the room because the negative energy coming from this thing was like turning on a cell phone 10 times stronger than a cell phone is, and then hoping that's going to do something. Well, it's going to do something. You can do anything short-term and get some kind of a short-term feeling or improvement by an infrared pad. But as you well know, some infrared pads are good and some aren't, but they're all going to give some results. They're going to give some feedback to the body that may actually feel beneficial, but long-term is not beneficial. So we have to look at short-term, long-term, and what's going to help us long-term versus short-term. If you're going to use something that's going to cause a bone loss, which is what any one of these devices that has a lot of electrical smog, if you read again the book The Invisible Rainbow and you look at the current occurrence of osteoporosis in the 1940s, early 1950s, I think there was 1,200, 1,500, something like that. Very few number of people with osteoporosis. Now there's 200 million. 200 million. Now, what also went up at the same time as osteoporosis? Consumption of milk, homogenized milk. Homogenized milk is not a food. Homogenized milk is like drinking a liquid plastic. It is so stressful for the body. You cannot get vitamin D from milk. If you're going to use something while you're going to do anything beneficial for yourself, it's vitamin D3 and K2 together. The K2 helps the D3 to be absorbed. K1, on the other hand, is for blood thinning, the blood thickening and blood thinning. So when people are getting all kinds of shots and things like that, it's causing a thickening of the blood because they're already dehydrated. Then K2, K1 for thinning of the blood, or just vitamin E or vitamin E foods, which was what we recommend. Vitamin K1 foods, vitamin E foods are extraordinarily beneficial right now. If you're going to do the PEMF device, and you need one that's going to cause a gentle relaxation and a stimulation that attenuates the same energy of the human body. You can't put a negative energy in the human body and expect it to long-term benefit. You can get some change to it, but the long-term benefit's not good. That's why some of these vibration plates, they only go up and down. So they literally bruise your feet and bruise your legs. If you get those ones like the 4D, which now you can get for about $300, I just bought one for Michael, with my daughter. They're 4-dimensional. They move like this. And Michael, as you remember, Michael a couple of years ago smashed his hip in a skiing accident and literally crushed the femur head and cracked the socket. Now, no problem. What's the thing that keeps him going is the QRS and doing the vibration plate. No pain whatsoever. And so he's building a house, and so walking up and down steps was a problem until he started using those devices.
And just to make a point here, so it's not that all dairy is bad, like raw dairy is fine, correct?
No. Raw dairy has no negative side effects.
Yeah,
for
that's
most
a whole
people.
different
That's right.
thing. So I eat a lot of raw cheeses because I crave K2. You get K2 in raw dairy.
That's
and
right.
So
That's
I was
exactly
eating
right.
a big bar of Parmesan this morning, which is super high protein, and it's
Yes.
raw Parmesan Reggiano.
That's right.
You get lots of beneficial nutrients in that. But yeah, the regular milk, the commercial milk, it's absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, it's really
what's in that.
disgusting. And the first thing you want to recognize in your own body, one of the things that we try to do, Wendy, as you know, is to teach people how to monitor themselves. If you eat something and you produce a lot of mucus, it means your body didn't like whatever it is you ate. Okay? So if you're doing something and you're producing a lot of mucus, either in your mouth or in your stool or in your coughing on a regular basis is not natural. You shouldn't be coughing on a regular basis. The guy says, well, I cough 3 times a day. I said, well, you're not supposed to cough once a day. There's a problem there, right? Well, the guy had congestive heart failure, and they had him on 4 drugs that had given him congestive heart failure. Duh. So I told him one of the first things I told him to do is eat raw dairy, goat cheese and raw cow cheese, white cheese, in which he's going to do. And he's a farmer, and so he's got access to all kinds of good meats and good cheeses, and he's outside all the time, so he gets a lot of regular vitamin D. But if people are not outside getting a lot of their body exposed, like 90% of their body exposed to the sunlight for an hour, you're not getting your D3. You're not getting it. So you've got to get D3 and K2 together. in order to get enough for it to be absorbed. But you don't take calcium supplements except the Mother Earth Minerals Double Plus Calcium. Their potassium, the other one that we'd like people to get the hydration protocol that we have. And if somebody will just send me an email to clinic@testingcancer and say hydration protocol, then Cheyenne will send you out our hydration protocol. It also has our iodine protocol in it. Everybody is low on iodine. And you can't orally take iodine. You can't take 20% iodine and consume it. It destroys your digestive system. You can take iodoral, which is why they created iodoral. You take iodoral and an ATP cofactor, and you can get your iodine that way. It's extremely expensive. It's like, $200 for a bottle, and then the ATP cofactor is about $50. You could take topical iodine and apply it topically to your legs, to your inguinal lymphatic area, to the side of the breast, and things like that. The other one that I really like is sitting on the PEMF device and then doing a foot bath, either with a hydrogen foot bath, which I really like. And in the hydrogen foot bath, we have them take methylene blue. We have them take 10 cc's of ivermectin called Normectin that comes from Ireland. Very good, clean ivermectin, and 20% iodine, and put that in the foot bath. Now, you should be working with somebody to test you to what your dosages should be, but the patients I'm working with, that's what they use, and they benefit tremendously. When you use the hydrogen bubbler with those solutions in the water, it causes your body to absorb them more, and it literally gets rid of spider veins.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I hadn't really thought about putting the substances into my foot baths when I do them. I do those at least a couple of times a week.
It's tremendous.
I hadn't really thought about adding those substances to it. That's a fantastic idea, because you have the biggest pores in your body are on your feet, so you're going to naturally absorb things through your feet.
Yes, and when you realize when you stimulate your feet with those substances, the other thing that women really like is they lose all this excessive skin off of their feet. Most of that excessive skin is actually a fungus. And so when that fungus builds up, which you can actually see in bunions, a bunion is a fungus growth. So you could do castor oil on your feet and put it into a nice cotton sock after you've done your foot bath, and just let your feet soak with a tremendous amount of castor oil, and then just let it sit with your feet in there. It gives you just magnificent looking feet.
That's a really good idea too.
Yeah.
I've done like lotion, like tallow, and put a sock on, but the castor oil would be an upgrade there.
Oh yeah, it is. It'd be tremendous. The other thing castor oil is very good for is to put it on your eyes. So you put it all over your face, which gives you a fountain of youth face. I mean, I'm 73 and my skin is soft as yours. Now, what are you, 40? Are you 30?
I am 52.
You are? Okay. I'm always underguessing your age because you're so young energetically. But yeah, castor oil in your face causes all of your collagen to build up. And then you just do facial exercises at the same time. And as you put the castor oil on your face, and you can also put it on your hair, it actually makes your hair thicken, which is tremendous. Hair loss and lack of hair thickening is often because of fungal or parasitic growth, and the castor oil eliminates both of those things.
Interesting. And there's so many benefits to castor oil.
Oh my God.
We're doing a webinar in January about castor oil. I just love
I
castor
can't
oil. And it's so sad. The FDA in Canada is really cracking down on castor oil and claims made around castor oil. And it just makes me so angry, because it's such a beneficial tool for detoxification, for nourishing your liver, beauty, and just for so many different uses for your health. And it's just anything that works. The government goes after anything that needs to spark your attention, like, oh, I need to do that.
Yeah. If they don't like it, you better
like
get
with
it.
peptides, right? Castor oil, or other things, ivermectin, like you need to rush the store and get that stuff, because that's what works. That's why it's being, attacked, censored, videos deleted off YouTube, etc.
That's right. One of the things I've noticed over the past couple of years, especially when we're monitoring the stress in people's bodies, wherever their emotional stress is, that's where the stress is from the shot. But it's reversible. When I first heard about all this fiasco going on, I don't have television, I don't have radio, I don't look at the internet for news, I don't listen to this stuff.
Like what? You don't subscribe to fear porn?
No, no, no. It's so funny because when all this fiasco first started happening, I had just moved up from Texas. I had this inclination I need to move from my place in Texas, which I really loved. It was right next to White Rock Lake. It was a beautiful place to be, wonderful place to ride a bike. It was safe to ride my bike. And I just felt like I needed to be on my farm. So I moved up to my farm. Again, I have no internet. I barely had a cell phone out there because they had no towers there at the time. And I walk into a store and I'm getting attacked because I don't have a mask. And when she stopped screaming, I couldn't understand what she was saying. I said, ma'am, you realize when you scream that people normally can't hear you? And I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. She goes, mask. And then she started to scream the word mask. I said, oh my God, you have me confused. You think I'm a surgeon. I'm not a surgeon anymore. I stopped doing surgery back in the 70s. And then she screamed a little louder. I thought, she's going to tackle me. I better get out of here. But what I discovered when I left there and I called Michael, and Michael started telling me about what was coming. And because he listens to all this stuff, right? And I thought, I got a message, a real strong, what appeared to be a negative download that 47% of the population will succumb to something. And it wasn't the thing they were talking about. It's the thing that they were sticking in you, right? And I thought, God, I said, you wouldn't leave us without an answer. And sure enough, he has not left us without an answer. One of the beautiful things is I've had this QRS for probably 12 years, 15 years.
Yeah, because they had the original patent in the 80s. They're like the first
they're
mat
the first
that,
ones.
and everything else is just a copy of that and a bad copy, and that's why they don't work.
But the reason they can't do a good copy, because if they do a good copy, then they break the patent.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to do some derivation of that, which ends up being a bad copy. But when I started using it to reverse the intensity of the damage that people were receiving, it was stunning. You could literally see on the chi fractal, you could see their energy change. You could see their spinal energy change, 20, 30, 40% improvement in a matter of minutes. It's really remarkable. When I would do the bioresonance, and that's like my favorite tool of all time. I said, if everybody had a bioresonance, they would need nothing else except to call me and ask me how to use it. The bioresonance is having a doctor in a box. You literally know more than any doctor or practitioner you've ever known in your lifetime. And I'm 73, going to be 74. I promise you, I've never met anybody who can see more than what you can see with this device.
I agree.
So now you can literally see when you do something, you go back and see it that something you did actually had a benefit because you can literally see it. So when I started doing that and doing the chi fractal and the bioresonance and then doing the interactions with the QRS and all these different protocols, you could literally see with the calcium cascade, you could literally see energy patterns change along the meridians. If someone had a loss where they've got stress in their lungs, you can literally see the stress change in their lungs when they're on the QRS. If someone had heartache because they've had and I've had a couple of those where they have the most potentially catastrophic looking heart issues. One of them said ischemia with 2% chance of survival after this shot. And I said, oh my goodness. And I found out he had a terrible loss, a lot of heartache. He said, and what's the word he used all the time? This is where we got to be careful of the words. It just breaks my heart. It just breaks my heart. I think about my mom and she's in her 80s and when she passed away, it just breaks my heart to think about it. I said, stop doing that because your heart's worse than hers.
Yeah. Well, your body is listening. Your body follows exactly what you say and you think.
It is.
Exactly. You have to be so careful with your words.
So we tell people when you're laying on the QRS, for example, I have them lay on the QRS and I tell them to say some words like, I'm so grateful that my entire body receives this exactly where I need it. And they hold their breath as programming the alpha cycle, which is where all programming comes from moment of birth and from generations before. Did I tell you about my most recent paper about generational traumas? I got to send that to you.
No.
We got a whole talk this on that one. Anyway, so I just have them lay there, and I'm so grateful that the only thing in my body is love, pure love. And wherever I need it, it goes to where I need it the most. So I have the QRS going to where it's needed because they're speaking of it. I'm so grateful that. That's the words. I'm so grateful that. I'm not asking for it. I'm so grateful that. Okay? I had someone who had not seen their daughter in 10 years because of some trauma that had happened in the family. And she showed up last weekend. all from this. I'm so grateful that this person is so healthy and happy. Everything is so magnificently joyful, this person, and everything resolved. Just like that. So as we say, I'm so grateful for, we can impart whatever love we want, whatever we want to have for ourselves and for our children. Anybody who's listening has a child, we can do that for the child. If a child's struggling, don't talk about their struggling. Don't journal all the negative stuff. Say, I'm so grateful my child is so full of joy. I'm so grateful my child is just, it feels so good every day. I'm so grateful my child and I have such a good relationship. I'm so grateful as I sleep, I know my child is sleeping with such peace. And after a short period of time, that's what happened.
So I want to introduce you to one of my favorite podcasts. It's from Dr. Jockers, and he hosts the Dr. Jockers Functional Nutrition podcast. Dr. Jockers is such a wealth of knowledge, and I just love how thorough he is with, every podcast and blog post that he produces. His Instagram has amazing infographics that make learning about health so clear and easy. And I just love his content, and I know that you are going to also. He's got over 400 podcast episodes where he shares practical tips around topics like fasting, disease prevention, brain health, and so much more. He's so thorough. Dr. Jockers has hundreds of 5-star reviews for his podcast. So if you're looking to continue to grow on your health journey, just search for Dr. Jockers on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. You won't regret it. I highly, highly recommend his show. Yeah, and that is such a powerful way to engage with life and engage with things you're trying to resolve versus worry, fear, guilt, and all these ways we essentially torture ourselves and make the problem worse, even in regards to your health and to your mental health. It's such a powerful kind of way to just flip that script. And if you and essentially, like, you can call it praying, manifestation, whatever you want to call it, and setting that message out there is so much more powerful than the alternatives.
The other book I wanted to mention before we leave today is Virus Mania. People think that viruses just fly into the air and everybody's going to get it. It doesn't work like that. Read the book Virus Mania. It's actually a scientific book about viruses and about any kind of viruses, and it's extremely well done. The other one is The Invisible Rainbow. It's a very long book. My goodness. I drove out to California because, I drive to see people. And so I drove to Wyoming, and then I drove to Utah, and then I drove to California, and then I drove and saw people on the way back. So on the way out and the way back, I listened to Invisible Rainbow. It's like, 900 pages or something. It's a very long book. But it's so detailed, and it talks about the influence of electricity on our bodies. The nice thing about when you're laying on the QRS, it literally puts a cloud of like joy around you, so none of the negative electricity touches you.
Yeah, and it cleans. Let's say, for instance, you're exposed to EMF all day, all different kinds, sources. It's only getting worse. You just clear all that up. You off your body every day when you do that. You charge up the cell voltage, anything that might have been positively impacted, which is negative for your body. So you're enacting a positive charge on the body when you're exposed to EMF.
That's right.
And this puts that negative grounding charge back in you, and you kind of just do a reset.
That's right.
Doing the QRS so that you don't have those, you don't suffer those negative effects of EMF like everyone else walking around.
That's right. If you look at every type of health challenge, thyroid is an electrical pollution problem. Okay, exacerbated by a lack of iodine. So if you have your cell phone up here where your thyroid is, you're constantly bludgeoning your thyroid. That's why you don't do that. You also don't put your phone in your hand where all your meridians are, unless you have one of those cards that we made. Because otherwise you're stimulating your meridians in your hand, which is every organ in your body. Thyroid is an energy organ. When the thyroid starts to go down, then the brain function goes down. Dementia and Alzheimer's is grossly overdiagnosed. It's often a thyroid issue. I had somebody that told me that she thought she was developing a stroke, very angry lady, and let's just say a very angry lady. And she's driving to the emergency room and she calls me and she says, "Oh, I'm having a stroke and a blah." I said, "No." I said, "You're having an anger and a thyroid problem." And she told me some nice words, which are not repeatable. And she had a really challenged liver, which then overwhelms the heart, which then overwhelms the thyroid. and very dehydrated. So she gets to the emergency room, and I get this kind of sheepish little apology going, I'm so sorry that I said those things to you. The people in the emergency room and says, well, it's no wonder you're angry. Your liver's so messed up from the drugs you're on for the gut issues that you had 20 years ago. If you keep doing that, you have like an alcoholic liver. That's affecting your thyroid, which then gives you the appearance of having a stroke. You're not having a stroke, you're having a thyroid issue that's exacerbated by your liver. Exactly what whoever told you that. And hydration is the key. Sea salt and water, sea salt and water, Celtic sea salt and water. Himalayan salt is not a very good salt for one primary reason. We have measured various bags of Himalayan salt and found out that 20 to 40% of those, what's supposed to be salt, is sand. It's Himalayan rocks. So imagine what those rocks are doing when you're consuming rocks and what they're doing when they go into your diverticuli. Not a good thing. So we love Himalayan salt baths. It's a magnificent bath to do, but it's not a very good thing to eat. So Celtic salt is really the best salt to use for hydration, and Himalayan salt's really good for the bath, but Celtic salt's also very good for the bath. We buy those in 30-pound bags, and that's what we put in our bath water. So you can take like a baking soda. We like people to do like a foot bath with a baking soda, for example, on a regular basis with the other things that I mentioned, and then do the QRS afterwards. It's like, oh, you just go into la la land, because everything you just did will be absorbed more, because one of the things we found with the QRS is that it causes an increase in all the nutrient minerals. It literally opens up the mitochondria to receive minerals, to receive hydration. So people will come very dehydrated, and within 1 hour of the mat, we'll measure the hydration again. It'll be up for 20 to 30% higher than when they started, just by being on the mat.
Oh, wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah, it's really quite remarkable.
Yeah. And so, Dr. Rankin, you're such a wealth of information. I always love talking to you,
Same here,
just
Wendy.
on the podcast, in person, personally as well. And when I come to your clinic, to be your patient as well. And I just really advise anyone that's searching for answers, that is looking for resolutions of their health issues, no matter what's going on with them, go see Dr. Rankin. You can go to his clinic in St. Louis, or it's outside of St. Louis,
Yes.
Missouri in the US, and just highly, highly recommend you. I go see you a couple times a year at least, and just go get a reset and recharge. I'm always looking to optimize my health and improve whatever I'm doing, up my game, and always learn so much from you. So Dr. Rankin, thank you so much for coming on the show, and tell us where can people get in contact with you
Okay.
and work with you.
A couple things, Wendy. With a new book just coming out, anybody who listens to the podcast and puts in new book and podcast, I'll send them a book for free. It's a $35 book. It's a beautiful book. It's called Finding Hope, and we're getting so much wonderful feedback from that. So if they'll do that, I'll also just remind me to send the energy protocol, and I'll do that. So testingcancer.com, it's been completely refurbished. We have the most magnificent cancer test on there now. If you do the cancer test, we'll automatically send you one of my new books, unless you tell me that you don't want it, then we won't send it. But we'll always send a PDF of the new book to you. And so testingcancer.com, and then just do if you want an appointment, there's an appointment link there. But if you just want to do the quiz. We'll take that information and send you information back, either about hydration or whatever. You put all the details you want in there, and between Cheyenne and myself, we'll be able to respond to you and get that information to you about that. If you decide that you want to get a QRS and you want to get a discount, I've worked out a discount with the manufacturer, and just tell me that, and I get a discount from them when you purchase a QRS. And then that'll be a great benefit to you. And then we'll support your use of it later with a mineral protocol, a hydration protocol, and the proper use of the device for any family member. If one family member buys it, we'll support the whole family member group of people using it.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and I can't recommend the QRS mat enough. It's an amazing PEMF mat, and I think it's really foundational for people's health, because you've got to ground your body, and that's going to take care of a lot of other symptoms and health issues, and just cellular metabolism problems. The cell voltage, which is imparts energy to your body. It's really, in our today's world, when we're bombarded with so many different frequencies, negative frequencies that harm our body, non-native frequencies, we've got to ground our bodies, and we're so far removed from the earth. A lot of grounding pads are complete garbage, and you have to stay away from them. The QRS is an invaluable component, I believe, of anyone's health protocol looking to improve their health. It makes such a huge difference. It's so, I can't even speak to it, how much of a difference it's made in my life. So I can't highly recommend it enough. So again, everyone, reach out to Dr. Rankin, Dr. Michael Rankin Sr. at clinic@testingcancer.com, or check out his website. And again, Dr. Rankin, thanks for coming on the show.
Nice seeing you, Wendy.
Yes,
Thank
and
you for
everyone.
partnering.
Yes, and thank you so much, everyone. I'm Dr. Wendy Myers. Thank you so much for tuning in to this show every week, where we bring you all the experts from around the world about bioenergetics, detoxification, anti-aging, and more advanced health topics. We're not doing the basics here. We do more of the advanced stuff for the more advanced folks that are looking to take their health and their life to that next level. So thanks for tuning in.
The Myers Detox podcast is created and hosted by Wendy Myers. This podcast is for information purposes only. Statements and views expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Wendy Myers and the producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.